Today, I'll be discussing how the Iran-US conflict has reshaped international business strategy and what lessons this creates for New Zealand policymakers and businesses. Specifically, this presentation examines how geopolitical instability affects global firms, how businesses are adapting strategically, and how New Zealand can strengthen resilience in an increasingly uncertain international environment. Over the past few decades, globalization has significantly increased economic interdependence between countries, firms, and supply chains. While global integration has created efficiency and growth opportunities, it has also increased vulnerability to geopolitical instability. The Iran-US conflict demonstrates how regional geopolitical issues can rapidly generate global business disruptions through energy markets, trade networks, and financial systems. As a result, firms are increasingly being forced to reconsider the foundations of their international strategies. Rather than focusing purely on cost efficiency, many firms are now prioritizing resilience, flexibility, and strategic security. This reflects a broader shift in global business environment, where geopolitical considerations are becoming increasingly important alongside traditional economic factors. The Iran-US conflict affects both international businesses directly and indirectly. Directly, geopolitical instability in the Middle East contributes to oil price volatility, rising transportation costs, and disruptions to major shipping routes. Because the Middle East remains strategically important for global energy markets, instability in the region can quickly increase operational firms worldwide and increase their costs. In addition, sanctions and trade restrictions create uncertainty for multinational corporations operating across borders. Indirectly, the conflict contributes to investor uncertainty, exchange rate volatility, and fragmentation of global supply chains. Importantly, businesses are increasingly operating in an environment where political risk is influencing strategic decision making alongside market forces. This suggests that geopolitical conflict is not simply a political issue, it is now a major strategic business issue. These business responses can be analysed through Ping's strategy tripod framework, which includes the industry-based view, resource-based view, and institution-based view. First, from the industry-based view, geopolitical instability increases competitive pressures across industries. Firms are now competing not only on price and innovation, but on supply chain security and operational stability. Second, from the resource-based view, firms with stronger dynamic capabilities are better positioned to respond to uncertainty. Capabilities such as diverse sourcing, networks, financial flexibility, and organizational adaptability have become increasingly important sources of competitive advantage. Third, the institution-based view highlights the role of governments, regulations, and sanctions in geopolitical alliances in shaping business strategy. Firms are therefore operating within an increasingly uncertain institutional environment that influence decisions around investments, expansions, and supply chain configuration. As a result, firms face an ongoing strategic tension between maintaining globally efficient operations and developing more resilient but often expensive business systems. In response to geopolitical uncertainty, many multinational corporations are restructuring their global business strategies. Apple, for example, has diversified parts of its manufacturing operations into countries such as India and Vietnam in order to reduce interdependence on concentration supply chains. This reflects a broader trend towards supply chain diversification and risk reduction. Tesla has similarly expanded regional manufacturing networks through its gigafactories, allowing the company to improve operational flexibility and reduce logistical vulnerability. Across industries, firms are increasingly prioritizing resilience over pure efficiency. Energy firms have also adopted hedging strategies and alternative sourcing approaches to manage volatility in oil markets and energy supply. However, while diversification and regionalization improve resilience, they can also increase operational costs and reduce economies of scale. This demonstrates that firms must continuously balance efficiency, flexibility, and strategy security under conditions of uncertainty. These developments create important implications for New Zealand policymakers, particularly organisations such as MFAT and the New Zealand Trade and Enterprise. First, New Zealand should continue diversifying trade relationships in order to reduce over-reliance on concentrated export markets and improve resilience against geopolitical shocks. Second, policymakers should strengthen support for SMEs through supply chain capability funding, digital transformation support, and strategic adaptation programs. Third, improving geopolitical intelligence systems and market risk monitoring would help firms respond more proactively to global disruptions. Finally, strengthening Asia-Pacific partnerships can improve regional economic resilience and create more stable long-term trade opportunities. However, these strategies are constrained by New Zealand's relatively small domestic market and geographic isolation, which may limit the speed and scale at which firms can restructure international operations. This means strategic adaptation must be gradual, targeted, and collaborative between firms and government institutions. In conclusion, the Iran-US conflict demonstrates how geopolitical instability is fundamentally reshaping international business strategy. Firms are increasingly moving away from purely efficiency-driven globalization models towards resilience-driven strategies focused on diversification, flexibility, and risk management. At the same time, political and institutional factors are becoming increasingly influential in shaping global business decisions. For New Zealand, maintaining international competitiveness will depend not only on economic openness, but also on the ability of firms and policymakers to strategically adapt to a more fragmented and uncertain global environment. Ultimately, in an era of geopolitical fragmentation, resilience is no longer simply operational, it is strategic.